The evening began like any other in Riverton. The sun was setting behind rows of office buildings, casting long orange reflections across glass windows and slow-moving traffic. People were finishing late emails, shutting down laptops, and packing bags to head home. Grocery stores filled with tired shoppers choosing dinner ingredients. Children argued over homework at kitchen tables. It was the kind of calm, predictable Monday that rarely made anyone stop and notice it. At 7:42 p.m., the first street light flickered. No one thought much of it. Lights flickered sometimes. It happened during storms or when the grid shifted power between neighborhoods. A passing driver barely glanced up before turning the radio louder and continuing down the road. Then the second street light blinked. And the third. Within seconds, an entire block dimmed and returned, as if the city had briefly inhaled and exhaled electricity. Inside Riverton General Hospital, a nurse paused mid-conversation as the ceiling lights buzzed softly. She glanced up, expecting them to stabilize. They did, and she shrugged it off. Across town, a family sitting down for dinner noticed their kitchen lights dim for half a second. The father joked about unpaid bills. Everyone laughed. The moment passed. What no one knew was that the city's power control center had already begun receiving error alerts. At first, the alerts looked minor, routine glitches that systems corrected automatically every day. Engineers continued sipping coffee, assuming the software would rebalance itself. Then the alarms multiplied. Red warnings began appearing across control panels faster than the engineers could read them. System logs filled with unknown commands. Remote access requests appeared from accounts that didn't exist. One engineer leaned forward, squinting at the screen. He typed quickly, trying to shut down the suspicious connection. The command failed. He tried again. Failed. He called his supervisor. Within minutes, the room filled with tension. Engineers gathered around screens, whispering confused questions. Someone suggested a malware infection. Someone else said it looked like a test simulation. No one said what everyone was beginning to fear. The system was no longer responding to them. At exactly 7:45 p.m., the entire power grid shut down. The city plunged into darkness. Thousands of homes lost electricity at the same moment. Television screens blinked off mid-sentence. Air conditioners stopped humming. Streetlights died one by one like falling dominoes. Traffic lights froze, trapping cars in chaotic intersections as horns began blaring in confusion. In high-rise apartment buildings, elevators stopped between floors. People inside pressed emergency buttons, their voices rising in panic as backup lighting flickered weakly. Inside restaurants, conversations turned into startled silence as darkness swallowed dining rooms. Waiters froze mid-step, plates in hand, unsure what had just happened. For a few seconds, the city was quiet. Then the sirens began. Emergency generators roared to life in hospitals, their deep mechanical growl echoing through hallways. Backup lights glowed dim and yellow, painting everything in uneasy shadows. Doctors rushed to check machines and life support systems, their faces tight with worry. At the power control center, engineers stared at screens that no longer responded. Every command they entered was rejected instantly. They attempted manual overrides, but even those failed. Someone whispered, "We've lost the grid." The words felt impossible. Cities didn't just lose power completely. Not like this. Outside, people stepped onto balconies and porches, staring at neighborhoods swallowed by darkness. Phone flashlights began dotting the streets like scattered stars. Social media exploded with confused messages. Is your power out too? What happened? Citywide blackout. Within minutes, local news stations began broadcasting emergency coverage using backup generators. Anchors tried to remain calm, reading statements from city officials who didn't yet understand what was happening. But the worst moment hadn't arrived yet. At 8:03 p.m., digital billboards across the city suddenly flickered back to life. At first, people felt relief. Power must be returning. The crisis might be ending. Instead of advertisements, a black screen appeared. White text slowly typed itself onto every digital display in Riverton. I control your city now. Drivers stopped their cars in the middle of roads to stare up at glowing billboards. Pedestrians gathered in small crowds, reading the message in silence. News cameras captured the moment live as the sentence appeared simultaneously across every screen connected to the city's network. A countdown timer appeared beneath the words. 72 hours. 72 hours. Then another line typed itself below the timer. Pay $50 million or everything goes offline permanently. The message vanished after 10 seconds. The screens went dark again. The silence that followed felt heavier than the blackout itself. Inside the mayor's office, phones began ringing nonstop. Advisors rushed into the room, speaking over one another, trying to piece together information that didn't make sense. The mayor stared at a tablet, replaying footage of the billboard message again and again. Cyber attack. The word echoed through the room like thunder. By 9 p.m., police headquarters had transformed into a command center. Officers, technicians, and government officials filled every available space. Whiteboards covered in scribbled notes lined the walls. Coffee cups stacked in corners as exhaustion arrived daily. The city declared a state of emergency before midnight. Meanwhile, Riverton's residents were left in the dark, literally and emotionally. Parents tried to comfort frightened children. Small businesses worried about spoiled food and lost income. Elderly residents sat by windows, unsure how long the darkness would last. Rumors spread faster than facts. Some people believed it was a terrorist attack. Others whispered about foreign governments. A few insisted it had to be a prank that had gone too far. No one imagined the truth. At 11:30 p.m., the mayor appeared on live television under harsh studio lights powered by backup generators. Her voice sounded calm, but her eyes betrayed exhaustion and fear. We are handling the situation. There is no need to panic. Essential services remain operational, and we are working around the clock to restore power. Her words were carefully chosen, but the message felt fragile, because behind the scenes, engineers were beginning to understand the scale of the disaster. This wasn't just a blackout. Someone had taken control of the city's entire digital infrastructure. Every attempt to regain access was blocked instantly. Backup systems had already been disabled. Emergency recovery protocols had been rewritten by an unknown user with administrator privileges. It was as if someone had walked into the city's control room months earlier, quietly memorized every button, and waited for the perfect moment to press them all at once. By early morning, grocery stores opened to long lines of anxious residents. ATMs stopped functioning. Gas stations struggled to process payments. Schools announced closures. Public transportation halted indefinitely. The city's daily rhythm shattered overnight. As the sun rose over Riverton, it revealed a city that looked normal on the outside but felt completely different underneath. Traffic crawled without signals. Police directed cars at major intersections. News helicopters circled overhead, capturing images of crowds gathering outside government buildings. Everyone asked the same question. Who did this? And more importantly, what would happen when the countdown reached zero? The first message arrived exactly 12 hours after the blackout began. By then, Riverton had spent an entire sleepless night in uncertainty. Emergency generators hummed nonstop, and the city felt like it was holding its breath, waiting for the next blow to land. At 7:42 a.m., every digital screen connected to the city's network flickered back to life again. The same black background appeared. The same cold white text began typing itself letter by letter, as if someone invisible was calmly writing a note to millions of people at once. I'm inside every network you rely on. The message lingered longer this time. Long enough for cameras to capture it from every angle. Long enough for fear to settle deeper into the city's nerves. Then the screen changed. I am watching. The text vanished before anyone could react. The hacker had given himself a name overnight. Investigators found it hidden inside the code of the attack. A signature buried deep in encrypted files. Spectre. It sounded less like a name and more like a warning. Inside Riverton's emergency command center, dozens of cybersecurity experts sat in front of glowing monitors. Many had not slept for more than an hour or two. Coffee cups and empty energy drink cans surrounded keyboards. Eyes were red and strained from staring at lines of code that refused to make sense. The deeper they looked, the more terrifying the situation became. Spectre wasn't just inside the power grid. He was everywhere. Traffic control systems, hospital networks, public transportation service, emergency dispatch lines, water treatment facilities, city payroll systems, surveillance cameras, public records databases. Every digital door the city depended on had already been unlocked from the inside. It wasn't a break-in. It was an occupation. One senior analyst leaned back in his chair and whispered what everyone else was too afraid to say out loud. Whoever did this didn't rush. This person had taken their time, mapping Riverton's entire digital landscape piece by piece. Every password, every backup route, every emergency protocol had been studied and quietly copied. The attack was months in the making, maybe longer. Each time engineers attempted to restore a system, something strange happened. The system would respond for a few seconds, just long enough to give hope, and then crash again. Logs revealed new commands being executed milliseconds after the engineers made changes, as if Spectre was watching their every move in real time. It felt less like fixing a machine and more like playing chess against an opponent who already knew every move before the game began. The mayor ordered a team of federal cybersecurity specialists to join the investigation. By afternoon, the command center grew even more crowded. Conversations overlapped in different languages and accents. Laptops covered every table. Screens displayed maps, code, graphs, and endless streams of encrypted data. Despite the chaos, a heavy silence hung in the air. Everyone knew the countdown was still running. By the second evening, Riverton had begun to feel the real effects of the attack. Grocery stores struggled to keep shelves stocked. Electronic payment systems were unreliable. Banks limited withdrawals. Gas stations began accepting only cash, creating long lines that wrapped around entire blocks. The city was slowly slipping backward in time. At exactly 6 p.m., the second real disaster arrived. People across Riverton turned on their faucets and heard nothing. At first, they thought pipes were frozen or clogged. But within minutes, calls flooded emergency lines. Entire neighborhoods reported the same problem. No water. Inside the water treatment plant, engineers stared at screens showing system shutdown commands they had never entered. Pumps had stopped. Filtration systems had powered down. Backup controls were locked behind new passwords no one recognized. A single message appeared on every public screen once again. 24 hours left. The words felt heavier than the blackout message. Water was different. Power outages were inconvenient. But the loss of clean water felt dangerous in a way that was impossible to ignore. Panic spread faster than officials could respond. Supermarkets were overwhelmed within an hour. Shelves emptied as people grabbed bottled water by the cartload. Arguments broke out in checkout lines. Police were called to multiple locations as tensions rose. Parents filled bathtubs with the last remaining water pressure. Restaurants closed early. Schools announced extended shutdowns. The city was unraveling piece by piece, exactly as Spectre had promised. Inside the command center, investigators worked non-stop tracing the hackers' communications. Every message Spectre sent was routed through dozens of countries within seconds. Servers in Europe, Asia, South America, and Africa appeared in the digital trail like stepping stones designed to confuse and mislead. The trail always ended the same way. No way. It was as if Spectre existed only inside the internet itself. Still, the team refused to give up. They combed through millions of lines of data searching for anything unusual. Every packet, every signal, every connection was analyzed repeatedly. Hours passed without progress. Then a junior analyst named Myra noticed something strange. It was almost invisible. A single data packet hidden inside a flood of outgoing traffic. So small it looked like background noise. So ordinary that automated systems ignored it completely. But Myra didn't ignore it. The packet didn't match the pattern of the others. It didn't bounce across international servers. It didn't hide behind layers of encryption. It moved in a straight line, quietly leaving the network and traveling a very short distance. Across town. Myra checked the address again. Satan, she had made a mistake. She hadn't. Her heart began to race as she called her supervisor. Within minutes, a small group gathered around her screen. The room grew quieter as they realized what they were seeing. The signal hadn't left the city. It had stayed in Riverton. The idea felt impossible. The scale of the attack suggested an international cybercriminal organization. Someone with massive resources and global reach. Not someone sitting in the same city they were destroying. But the data didn't lie. The packet pointed toward a residential internet provider. A normal home connection. The kind used by family streaming movies or checking email. Investigators double-checked the results again and again. Every test confirmed the same thing. Somewhere in Riverton, A device that communicated directly with Spectre's network without using the global routing system. It was the first real clue they had. The command center buzzed with renewed energy. For the first time since the blackout began, hope flickered among the exhausted team. They might finally have a direction. They began narrowing the signal to a specific neighborhood, then to a specific street. The location was quiet and unremarkable. Rows of houses with small front yards. Children's bicycles resting on sidewalks. Porch lights that no longer worked because of the blackout. The kind of neighborhood no one would ever suspect of hiding a cybercriminal capable of crippling an entire city. Investigators stared at the map in disbelief. Could the person behind the attack really be living among the very people they were terrorizing? As the countdown continued ticking down, one truth became impossible to ignore. Spectre wasn't some distant digital ghost hiding across the world. Spectre was closer than anyone had imagined. The discovery of the local signal changed the atmosphere inside the command center overnight. For the first time since the attack began, the investigation felt grounded in something real. Spectre was no longer just a faceless presence hiding behind international servers and encrypted messages. There was now a physical direction, a place on the map, a neighborhood filled with real houses and real people. The signal traced back to a quiet residential area on the northern edge of Riverton. It was the kind of place where nothing dramatic ever seemed to happen. Tree-lined streets curved gently between rows of modest homes with trimmed lawns and parked cars resting in driveways. During normal times, children rode bikes in circles and neighbors waved to each other while collecting mail. Even in the middle of the citywide crisis, the neighborhood looked peaceful in the morning sunlight. That contrast made the discovery feel even more unsettling. Investigators gathered around a large digital map projected on the wall. A blinking dot marked the source of the unusual data packet. The dot didn't move. It didn't flicker. It sat quietly at the end of a cul-de-sac, almost as if it was daring them to come closer. No one spoke for a long moment. The scale of the cyber attack still didn't match the simplicity of the location. Months of infiltration. Perfectly timed system takeovers. Total control of critical infrastructure. It felt impossible that the person responsible could be living in a normal house surrounded by neighbors who probably had no idea what was happening. Still, the evidence left no room for doubt. By mid-morning, a small surveillance team was assembled. Their instructions were simple. Observe quietly. Confirm the signal. Do nothing that might alert the suspect. The team arrived in unmarked vehicles and parked several houses away. From a distance, the target house looked ordinary. A single-story home with faded paint and a narrow driveway. A small tree stood near the front yard, its branches swaying gently in the cold wind. Curtains were drawn across the windows. No visible signs of anything unusual. The house belonged to a 23-year-old man named Ethan Cole. His file appeared on screens inside the command center within minutes. Investigators scanned through every available record, searching for anything that might connect him to cybercrime. There was almost nothing. No criminal history. No traffic violations. No outstanding debts. No employment records for the past year. His college enrollment showed he had studied computer science for 2 years before dropping out. After that, his trail went quiet. No job. No social media presence. No obvious income. It was as if Ethan Cole had simply faded into the background of the world. Neighbors described him the same way. Quiet. Polite. Easy to overlook. He occasionally helped carry groceries or held doors open, but he never stayed long enough for conversations. No loud parties. No suspicious visitors. No strange behavior that anyone could remember. He was the kind of person people forgot within minutes of meeting. The surveillance team watched the house through long camera lenses and tinted windows. Hours passed with very little activity. Curtains never opened. No one entered or left. The driveway remained empty. Just before noon, the front door finally opened. Ethan stepped outside wearing a hoodie and jeans. He stretched as if he had just woken up. His hair looked messy, and his expression seemed half asleep. He walked to the mailbox, pulled out a small stack of letters, and flipped through them casually. There was nothing about him that suggested he was controlling a city. He looked like someone who had spent the morning playing video games and forgotten to shave. He returned inside within 2 minutes. The surveillance team exchanged uncertain glances. The image didn't match the threat. The person who had terrified millions of people felt like he belonged in a college dorm room. not at the center of the largest cyber attack in the city's history. But the data didn't lie. Later that afternoon, investigators gained legal authorization to examine Ethan's internet activity. What they found erased any remaining doubt. His home network usage was enormous. Not slightly above average. Not unusually high. Massive. The amount of data moving through his connection matched the usage of a small corporate office. Encrypted traffic flowed constantly, day and night, without interruption. Large transfers moved in and out at irregular intervals. The pattern suggested complex automated systems running continuously in the background. Someone inside that house was doing something far beyond ordinary internet browsing. The tension inside the command center grew thicker with each passing hour. The countdown now showed less than 48 hours remaining. Every new piece of evidence added urgency to the situation. Surveillance continued into the evening. At sunset, Ethan left the house again. He walked to a nearby convenience store, bought snacks and soda, and returned home without speaking to anyone. His movements were predictable and routine. He didn't check over his shoulder. He didn't act nervous. If he was Spectre, he showed no sign of fear. That lack of fear made investigators even more uneasy. They began monitoring the home's wireless signals from a distance. The results confirmed their worst suspicions. Multiple encrypted connections radiated from the house simultaneously, each linked to hidden networks that changed constantly. It was like staring at a spider web made of invisible threads. One analyst compared it to listening to a crowded room filled with whispers spoken in dozens of languages at once. By midnight, the decision became unavoidable. The house would need to be searched. Still, doubts lingered in the back of everyone's minds. Could a single person really orchestrate an attack this sophisticated? Could someone so quiet and ordinary hide such enormous capability? The team reviewed Ethan's past again, searching for missed clues. School records showed he had excelled in programming and mathematics from an early age. Teachers described him as brilliant but withdrawn. He preferred computers to people. Group projects frustrated him. Social events exhausted him. After leaving college, he seemed to vanish from public life entirely. One investigator quietly said what many others were thinking. Maybe this was exactly the kind of person who could do it. Someone invisible. Someone patient. Someone who felt more comfortable in digital worlds than in the real one. Outside, Riverton continued struggling through its second night without reliable utilities. Bottled water grew scarce. Hospitals rationed supplies carefully. News coverage turned more urgent with every passing hour. And in a quiet house at the end of a peaceful street, Ethan Cole sat inside a bedroom no one had yet seen. A bedroom where enormous amounts of data flowed through the walls like an invisible storm. A bedroom that might be the control center of a city under siege. As the countdown ticked lower, the distance between suspicion and certainty began to dissipate. The decision to raid the house came just after midnight. By then, Riverton had spent 2 full days trapped inside Spectre's countdown, and the pressure on the investigation had become unbearable. Officials knew they were running out of time. The timer showed less than 12 hours remaining. Every minute lost felt like another piece of the city slipping closer to permanent damage. Inside the command center, the room felt heavy with exhaustion. Screens glowed against tired faces. Conversations had grown quieter, slower, more serious. No one celebrated the discovery of Ethan Cole anymore. The excitement of finding a suspect had been replaced by a tense understanding that this might be the city's last chance to stop the attack. If they were wrong, there would be no time to recover. The raid was scheduled for 3:12 a.m. The timing was chosen carefully. Most people would be asleep. The streets would be empty. There would be less risk of attention or interference. Every detail was planned to avoid alerting Ethan before officers entered the house. A convoy of unmarked vehicles rolled quietly through Riverton's dark streets. Without functioning streetlights, the city looked unfamiliar, almost abandoned. The darkness felt deeper than usual, as if the city itself were waiting to see what would happen next. When the vehicles reached the neighborhood, they parked several houses away. Officers stepped out silently, their breath visible in the cold night air. Radio stayed quiet. Doors closed gently. The entire operation moved forward in near silence. The house looked exactly as it had during surveillance. Dark windows. Closed curtains. No movement inside. It felt peaceful, almost too peaceful for a place suspected of holding the control center of a massive cyber attack. The team moved into position. One officer knocked firmly on the front door. No response. He knocked again, louder this time. Still nothing. After a brief pause, the team leader gave a silent signal. The door was forced open, and officers entered quickly and carefully, clearing each room one by one. The living room was empty. The kitchen looked untouched, as if no one had cooked in days. The refrigerator hummed softly, the only sound in the house. The hallway lights flickered weakly from a portable generator somewhere inside. Then they reached the bedroom door. It was closed. An officer pushed it open slowly. Inside, Ethan Cole sat upright in bed, blinking at the sudden light flooding the room. His expression wasn't angry or afraid. It was confused, as if he had been woken from a deep sleep and hadn't yet understood what was happening. Officers shouted commands, ordering him to stay still. He raised his hands without hesitation. He didn't argue. He didn't resist. He just stayed around the room, trying to process the scene unfolding in front of him. For a moment, the room looked ordinary. A bed with rumpled blankets, posters on the wall, empty soda cans on the floor, a desk covered in clutter. Then the officers noticed the computers. 6 monitors glowed in the darkness, casting pale blue light across the walls. 3 large computer towers sat beneath the desk, their fans spinning steadily. External drives were stacked in neat rows like books on a shelf. Cables ran across the floor in tangled lines, connecting everything together. Every screen displayed maps, graphs, and streams of code. One monitor showed the city's power grid. Another displayed traffic control systems. A third showed hospital networks. Others displayed water treatment facilities and communication networks. All connected, all active, all under control from this room. The realization hit the officers at the same time. This wasn't just a suspect's bedroom. It was a command center. Ethan watched their reactions carefully. His eyes moved from one officer to another, trying to understand why they looked so tense. Finally, he spoke. Did the timer hit 0? The question stopped everyone cold. The team leader stepped forward slowly, studying Ethan's face. The words didn't sound like a threat. They sounded like a genuine question. The countdown. Ethan knew about the countdown. That was all the confirmation they needed. Ethan was placed in handcuffs and escorted out of the house, while a team of digital forensics experts rushed inside. The moment Ethan left the room, the urgency inside the house intensified. Specialists moved quickly, photographing screens and securing hard drives. The countdown continued ticking. Less than 2 hours remained. Back at the command center, Ethan sat inside an interrogation room under bright lights. His hands rested calmly on the table. He didn't ask for a lawyer. He didn't demand explanations. He simply waited, as if he believed this situation would resolve itself eventually. Investigators entered with files and photographs from the bedroom. They placed images of the computer setup in front of him. "Do you know what you've done?" one investigator asked. Ethan looked at the photos, then back at the investigator. His expression showed confusion rather than guilt. "I was helping," he said quietly. The answer stunned the room. Meanwhile, experts raced against the clock to stop the automated shutdown. They combed through Ethan's computers searching for the command system controlling the countdown. The screens showed live access to city infrastructure. But the deeper they looked, the stranger things became. They couldn't find the master controls. Programs ran automatically. Scripts executed without manual input. Commands originated from outside sources that didn't appear on the system logs. It felt like searching for a steering wheel in a car that was already driving itself. 30 minutes remained. Inside the interrogation room, Ethan struggled to explain himself. He spoke about an online cybersecurity project he had joined months earlier. A forum post had invited programmers to test city infrastructure defenses in a controlled environment. He believed he was participating in a legal experiment designed to improve security. Investigators exchanged uneasy glances. The story sounded absurd, but Ethan spoke with complete sincerity. He described tasks he had been given, programs he had been told to run, and systems he believed were simulations. The realization began to form slowly, painfully. 10 minutes remained. Back in the bedroom, an analyst finally shouted for attention. Hidden deep inside the network logs, he had found something unexpected. The computers weren't issuing commands. They were relaying them. The entire setup functioned as a relay station, forwarding instructions from somewhere else. Every action traced back to an external source hidden behind layers of encryption. The room fell silent. The city had focused on the wrong suspect. As the countdown reached its final seconds, the truth began to emerge. The countdown reached 0 at 9:42 a.m. Inside the command center, no one spoke when the timer hit its final second. The silence felt unreal, like the pause before a storm breaks. Every screen in the room showed the same thing. The city's systems waiting for the command that had been building toward this moment for 3 long days. Then the screens flickered. Across Riverton, digital billboards, public screens, and emergency broadcast channels turned black at the same time. The message appeared slowly, the familiar white letters typing themselves across the darkness. "Thank you for the cover, Ethan." A collective chill moved through the command center as the words sank in. Investigators stared at the message, the realization spreading from one person to another like a silent wave. They had been outplayed. For hours they had treated Ethan Cole as the mastermind behind the attack. They had focused their entire operation on his house, his computers, and his supposed role in the crisis. And while they were doing that, the real Spectre had remained exactly where he wanted to be. Invisible, hidden, untouchable. The message remained on screens for only a few seconds before vanishing, but the damage it left behind felt permanent. The city's networks began to shake under a new wave of commands. Systems flickered between online and offline states. Backup servers failed one after another. It was as if Spectre had been waiting patiently for the countdown to end before pressing a final series of buttons. Inside the bedroom that investigators had just searched, analysts worked frantically, their hands moving across keyboards faster than they could think. Every piece of data from Ethan's computers was being re-examined. Every connection, every log, every encrypted packet was now seen through a completely different lens. The truth became clearer with every passing minute. Ethan had never been controlling the attack. He had been relaying it. Months earlier, he had discovered an online forum dedicated to cybersecurity challenges. The forum claimed to host real-world testing projects designed to expose weaknesses in infrastructure, so they could be fixed. Participants were encouraged to run software tools, monitor network responses, and submit performance data. The language sounded professional. The tasks sounded legitimate. The community appeared knowledgeable and supportive. For someone like Ethan, it felt like an opportunity. He had spent most of his life feeling invisible. After dropping out of college, he had struggled to find direction. The forum gave him a sense of purpose and belonging. He believed he was contributing to something meaningful, something bigger than himself. What he didn't know was that the forum had been created by Spectre. Every task Ethan completed helped map Riverton's infrastructure. Every program he ran opened a new door. Every piece of data he shared made the attack stronger. He wasn't a hacker in his mind. He was a volunteer tester helping improve security. The cruel brilliance of the plan stunned investigators. Spectre had built a human shield without Ethan ever realizing it. By routing commands through Ethan's network, he created a perfect scapegoat. When the attack was discovered, all digital trails would point to a single quiet man in a bedroom filled with computers. And it worked. The city had spent precious hours focusing on Ethan while Spectre remained safely hidden behind layers of distance and deception. Back in the interrogation room, Ethan sat in silence as investigators explained what they had discovered. His expression shifted slowly from confusion to disbelief, and finally to quiet horror. He replayed his memories out loud, searching for moments when he should have realized the truth. The more he spoke, the clearer it became how carefully Spectre had manipulated him. Every instruction had sounded harmless. Every step had been presented as a simulation. Every warning sign had been disguised as technical complexity that Ethan assumed he simply didn't understand yet. When the truth finally settled in, Ethan lowered his head and whispered a single sentence. "I thought I was helping." The words hung in the air long after he stopped speaking. Meanwhile, Riverton struggled through the aftermath of the countdown. Systems didn't collapse completely as Spectre had threatened, but the damage was severe. Weeks of repairs would be needed to restore full functionality. Engineers worked around the clock to rebuild networks and secure vulnerabilities that had been exposed. Citizens slowly returned to their daily routines, but the sense of safety they once felt had changed. The idea that one unseen person could hold an entire city hostage from behind a screen was no longer a distant possibility. It was a reality they had lived through. The investigation into Spectre continued for months. Federal agencies joined the search. International cybersecurity teams analyzed every piece of evidence. The forum Ethan had joined disappeared overnight, leaving behind only fragments of data that led nowhere. The deeper investigators searched, the clearer it became that Spectre had planned every detail with extreme precision. He left no identifying information, no financial trail, no physical evidence. Every digital footprint dissolved into a maze of dead ends. It was as if Spectre existed only as a voice in the network, appearing when he wanted and vanishing when the world tried to look back. Years passed, and the Riverton attack became a case study in cybersecurity courses around the world. Experts studied the tactics used, the vulnerabilities exploited, and the psychological manipulation that made the attack possible. The story became a warning about how modern cities depend on invisible systems most people never think about. Ethan Cole eventually faded from public attention. He was remembered less as a criminal and more as a tragic example of how easily trust can be weaponized. His role in the attack remained a complicated topic, debated by experts and journalists alike. But the real mystery never disappeared. Spectre was never found. No arrests were made. No identity confirmed. No location discovered. The person who had controlled Riverton from the shadows simply vanished after the final message. Sometimes, long after the city had recovered, investigators would revisit the case files and wonder if Spectre was still out there, watching, waiting, searching for another city filled with systems to map and people to manipulate. Because the most chilling part of the Riverton attack wasn't the blackout or the countdown or the ransom demand. It was the lesson Spectre left behind. He had proven that a city doesn't need to be invaded to be controlled. It only needs to be connected. And somewhere, in a room no one has found yet, another countdown could already be running.